New woke history book promoted to schools claims that Stonehenge was built by black people, while Waterloo and Trafalgar go untaught. Which is a very weird thing to do. It's very, very strange. What's happening? Woke teaching resources promoted to schools claim that Stonehenge was built by black people and the Roman Emperor Nero married a trans woman, according to a think tank. Pro-transgender teaching materials also claim that genital mutilation of slaves was a form of gender transition. Wasn't the genital mutilation of slaves to prevent them from raping the noble women that they were servants for the most part? Well, what do they mean by this? Eunuchs are not trans. But landmark British victories, such as those at Waterloo and Trafalgar, go largely untaught, with research suggesting as few as 1 in 10 schools include them in the curriculum.
But anti-racist history is real history. It's not what the conservatives say it is. We're just teaching real things.
A policy exchange investigation has warned that the schools have taken it too far as they adapt history curriculums in the wake of Black Lives Matter protests. Brother, May 17th, 2025. What do they mean in the wake of Black Lives Matter protests? That was years ago. The prestigious center-right unit found that George Floyd's death in 2020 led to schools hastily including material about ethnic minorities to appear anti-racist.
Saint Floyd of the fentanyl, in his name we pray, amen.
Why do they always have to mention him, dude? Like, it's getting insane. St. Floyd mentioned. Former history teacher and chairman of a campaign for real education, Chris McGovern, said it was clear that the subject has been captured by the left. The report added that some resources, such as the book Brilliant Black British History, pushed contested narratives, such as black people building Stonehenge. The book is marketed as a must-have in any school library, but its claim that early Black Britons built the world-famous Neolithic stone circle is hotly contested and outside mainstream historical thinking, yet presented as fact, according to the think tank. I have not once ever heard the claim that Stonehenge was built by black people. I don't think I remember hearing Stonehenge being attributed to any sort of people building it at all. I'm pretty sure it's similar to the pyramids where they're just like, maybe it was aliens. I don't know, dude. How did this get here? What is this? What is this? While in some cases, these initiatives have a positive effect, such as exposing pupils to wider world history, the report flagged serious concerns about replacing facts with biased narratives. If you're pushing a biased narrative that's not based in historical fact, what are the some cases that they can have a positive effect? How are you exposing pupils to wider world history if the world history isn't true and real? Like, that doesn't make any sense. It warned, in too many cases, this process has gone too far, leading to the teaching of radical and contested interpretations of the past as fact, or with anecdotes of interesting lives replacing a deeper understanding of the core drivers of history. One resource from the Classical Association's Queering the Past project claims the Roman Emperor Nero married a trans woman called Sporus, but omits the fact that they probably underwent a forced castration rather than consensual gender reassignment. I need to look up what Queering the Past project is. Well, there's this one link, classicalassociation.org, Queering the Past. Queering the Past is an interactive online resource which has been developed by a team of teachers and scholars to address...
Cat raid. What the hell is this spicy cat raid?
Lily playing games, thank you for the raid. Welcome, Raiders. Welcome, Raiders.
By a team of teachers and scholars to address an important gap in school education on LGBTQ subjects, and to use information from antiquity to help students gain confidence in addressing modern critical and contentious issues. The goal of Queering the Past is therefore to help teachers introduce students to topics of sexuality and gender via the ancient Mediterranean. I can just feel the shaking anger of all of the men in chat who always have to push back on the Greeks weren't actually hella gay every time it comes up. Teachers and students can use these ebooks, lessons, and activities to explore LGBTQ plus identities and issues in a range of subject lessons such as English, history, and classics, as well as relationships and sex education, known as RSE. Equally, they could be used by LGBTQ plus student groups and as a part of a school-wide celebration of LGBT History Month in February or Pride Month, June. Excuse you fucking me! How dare the gays co-opt Black History Month? What is this? How could they do this? The chapters include activities, but these are clearly not exhaustive. There's plenty of room for teachers to develop their own assignments, and separate Google documents give instructors background information on the chapters themselves. The QTP, Queering the Past team, hope that these resources are interesting, thought-provoking, and non-threatening. If these were actual, like, historical facts and things in history that you were just wanting people to learn about because they were real and true and actually happened, why would you need to add non-threatening to the end of your resources for teachers? That seems like a really weird thing to tack on to the end there. Please contact the project lead, Nancy Rabinowitz, if you have any ideas, corrections, or feedback, or would like to get involved as a new contributor to the project. The project was supported by the CA and the Society for Classical Studies, as well as the Archive of Performance of Greek and Roman Drama. I don't like how Chapter 1 is Sappho. I know Sappho was like an actual figure, but whenever I hear about like sapphic lesbian shit, I always just think of like they're always like the crazy ones, right? Like wasn't there like that Sappho furry person who had like really weird shit in their past as well? Erase all of it. Another thing you hate is that they're getting rid of AD and BC. Wait, are they? Why? Why? Who were the Amazons? Were they something that Greeks imagined? Stories designed to reinforce their ideas about the traditional gender roles played by men and women in society? Or were they invented to strengthen xenophobic stereotypes about foreigners? Or were they based upon historical warrior women? Chat, they're gonna ruin the Amazonian woman warriors for us. How could they do this? Chapter 4, Ancient Mesopotamia? Non-binary gender in ancient Mesopotamia? Mesopotamia is often described as a place of important cultural beginnings, with developments occurring as early as the Neolithic period, which is 10,000 BCE, and the world's first writing emerging in the 4th millennium BCE. Brother. Brother. But my death by Snoo Snoo.
Yes! Oh, thank you, Lord in heaven.
Death by Snoo Snoo is more real than anything written on this page. Achilles and Patroclus. What do we know? And what claims can we make about men who loved men in the ancient world? How has Achilles and Patroclus' relationship been presented in different retellings from Homer to the present day? This is riveting, I cry. What's ironic about Xena is it had lesbianism in it, and it kind of sort of made sense, right? Whether or not they were considered romantic partners depends largely on the era. Well, this is one website. The other website I pulled up was the EUI.EU, so European University Institute. New project on queer past to diversify our history. That's a weird way of phrasing it. I feel like history's already happened. It's kind of set in stone. What do you mean by diversifying it? A web page for a major new project on queer histories in German-speaking Europe launched this week. This is in 2022, also in May somehow. In an interview, principal investigator at the EUI, Professor Benno Gamerl, gives more information about the origin, scope, and aim of the network. This week, EUI historian Benno Gamerl, together with Andrea Rotman and Martin Luke from the Free University Berlin and 20 collaborators from Europe and North America, launched the online presentation of their new research network on queer histories in German-speaking Europe. The project had received 3 years of funding from the German Research Foundation, or the DFG.
Queer Zeitgeschichten?
Queer Contemporary History in German-speaking Europe The DFG-funded research network Queer Contemporary History in German-Speaking Europe introduces a general audience to the history of lesbians, gays, bisexuals, trans, and intersexual persons, LGBTI, in the Federal Republic, the GDR, Austria, and Switzerland. How have discourses, practices, and subjectivities changed since 1945? How have non-normative sexualities and genders shaped the production of societal norms? In addressing these questions, the project pays particular attention to the politics of memory, to critical re-evaluations of identity categories, and to intersexual entanglements between heterosexist, classist, racist, and other forms of discrimination. Critical re-evaluations of identity categories is an interesting thing to apply to history. While examining liberalization, emancipation, and normalization, comrade, the situation has been normalized. Normalization from a queer angle, the project also devises fresh approaches to contemporary history more broadly. In an accessible format, 3 volumes on spaces, identifications, and political strategies, respectively, will discuss inspiring research on recent queer history. The DFG network is administratively located within the Working Group for History Education at Freie Universität Berlin. The academic coordinators are Bino Gamerl, European University Institute in Florence, Martin Luke, Freie Universität Berlin, and Andrea Rothman, Freie Universität Berlin, who are supported by Vanessa Kyrian and Jonah Ryman. I don't know who any of these people are. What does this research aim to contribute? It may surprise some, Gamerl notes, but an overview on queer contemporary history does not yet exist. This project will provide one in an accessible format that researchers, students, teachers, and activists can work with. Beyond this is the need to diversify history in general, and contemporary history in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland in particular. More and various voices should join the choir that hums the melodies which make up our cultural memories. That's still a really weird way to phrase it. Right, like if there are like real and true stories that are out there and just aren't told en masse, like yeah, fucking bring them out there. Right? Like, I want to hear as much as humanly possible about historical events. But, like, if you're having to, like, rework identities and, like, rename people as gay when they were not, and then, like, try to shoehorn in stuff that doesn't make any sense, I feel like doing that is just, like, a disservice to everyone. 3 guiding concepts from liberalization to normalization. This just sounds like commie gobbledygook! The project looks at spaces, identities, and strategies. According to Gamerl, can I just call him Gammy? According to Gammy, it relies on 3 concepts: liberalization, emancipation, and normalization. The increasing freedoms individuals have enjoyed since the 1960s is the essence of liberalization. Yet the experiences of the LGBT people during this period include numerous setbacks and contradictions. Network member Craig Griffiths has pinpointed the ambivalences of gay liberation, how brazen and how restrained people were at the same time. With reference to the second concept, we look at other groups who have supposedly been on the road to emancipation. Women, people of color, the disabled, and economically disenfranchised folks. Intersectionality is the key word here. That is some commie gobbledygook. For example, network member Christopher Ewing is looking at the intersection between race and sexual orientation. It is vital to consider these multiple struggles when writing a richer and better history of contemporary Europe. We read a research journal a few months back about how they're now trying to connect the intersectionality between race and disability, which was a very interesting thing to read about. And then also to several days later see somebody in the mainstream basically alluding to, yeah, we need to treat minorities and women the exact same as disabled people. The project's exploration of normalization is from a slightly different angle than liberalization or emancipation. The new normality, where homo and heterosexual lifestyles are equally acceptable, also comes with a new sense of competitiveness. Is our lesbian marriage going to be happier and more stable than our neighbor's heterosexual partnership? The domestic violence statistics disagree. When my gay, non-monogamous life does not grow up to the expectations nurtured by cruise ship ads or online porn, what gym or which therapy should I sign up to so I can optimize my own performance? What the fuck is this sentence that I just read? What the When my gay, non-monogamous life does not grow up to the expectations nurtured by cruise ship ads or online porn, What gym or which therapy should I sign up to? If you're basing what your big gay non-monogamous life is going to be on online gay pornography, you're gonna have a bad life. If you're a straight guy basing your life on what straight pornography is, you're gonna have a bad life and a non-working dick. You get an extra debuff, unlike the gays. What the fuck am I reading? What the fuck am I reading? The self-inflicted lead injection therapy. I like how right after reading that sentence that has absolutely fucking floored me, this guy says, it is crucial to address the new challenges within the dynamics of normalization. The more we read, the more the commie gobbledygook soaks through, baby. The research will draw on a variety of sources, from text and photographs to material objects, for example, condoms and sex toys, to interviews. What? Many team members work with oral history interviews, which Gammy notes are especially rewarding and productive. And also not exactly the most accurate? Like, we've already gone through the gay civil war on Twitter, where people were trying to rewrite the history of Stonewall, where they were trying to attribute, like, the first brick thrown or whatever to, like, a trans woman, but it wasn't a trans woman. It was a gay cross-dressing man who believes that he is a gay cross-dressing man. So, like, they've already tried changing that. The relationship between the historian and her sources changes once those sources can talk back. I get the point they're trying to make, but this also draws the line at the, like, history is written by the winners kind of thing. And if you're only getting the story from one person, it's very likely they're not telling the full story. Can we have the DDR back? You heard necromancy. I wish we were talking about necromancy. Maybe if we gave necromancy to India, there'd be less cases of necrophiliac rape. The relationship between the historian and her sources changes once those sources can talk back. This method also gives responsibility to researchers for how they deal with the persons whose stories they analyze, something absolutely crucial, not just for queer historians. Why do they have to be queer historians? Can't they just be regular historians? Because, like, if queer history is just a part of history, you don't have to specify that it is queer history. When you give it that, like, modifier at the beginning, it makes people look at you incredulously and be like, well, are you actually telling me the truth, or did you do something fucky-wucky here? When asked about the scope of the research, German-speaking European countries in the period from 1945 to the early 2000s, Gammy explains that queer history is often told along a timeline defined by what happened in the US. Is he forgetting about the, like, Sexology Institute? Are we just all forgetting that that was a thing that existed? Are we forgetting about the book burning? That, like, you're not allowed to ask what books the Nazis were burning? Did we forget about this? That was in Germany. I'm not crazy. The model simply does not fit all other countries. It is important to make the variety of trajectories known to a broader public. I am convinced that Stonewall was not the only place, and that 1969 was not the only year when same-sex desiring and gender non-conforming people resisted the violence and oppression they faced and began to forge a space for themselves. I mean, this would be a good point, right? Like, if there were other Stonewalls happening around the world, it would be interesting to know about them, would it not? What is more, if our project can facilitate further endeavors and present the queer histories of countries like... If our project can facilitate further endeavors that present the queer histories of countries like Russia, Turkey, Egypt, or South Africa in a comprehensive and more visible format, that would, of course, be absolutely fabulous. Why did they pick those 4 countries specifically? What the fuck? USAID, is that you? Oh my god, dude. It is notable that within the project's geographical scope, there was and is a wide variety of experiences. Most research is done on West Germany, while other places hardly receive the attention they deserve. Austria, for example, is special as it was one of the few countries in the world where female homosexuality was criminalized. And one of the most influential and longest-running homosexual magazines of all time, Der Kreis, was published in Switzerland. I got some questions. If typically in every country male homosexuality was criminalized, but female homosexuality, according to this, was only criminalized in a few countries, Austria being one of them, is this another example of how, like, in Japan, culturally, they see lesbianism and yuri as a, like, passing phase that women will naturally experience, and that a lesbian relationship is not to be taken seriously, and women cannot love each other in the same way that a woman can love a man? Is that what we're getting at here? Is this how the mentality of men are just like, oh yeah, it's only cheating if she fucks a man, but if she fucks a woman, that's cool. That's not cheating because women aren't really people. Is that how this worked out? Sounds like it. Jesus Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. Can't take anyone from Berlin serious anymore. I mean, looks like it. Gross. Imagine being thought of as such a second-class citizen that even your homosexuality wasn't good enough to be criminalized. Queen Victoria didn't believe it was real. One of the most influential, I read that part. In terms of prosecution, same-sex intercourse was decriminalized in Switzerland in 1942, while West Germany stuck to the Nazi version of paragraph 175 until 1969. In the GDR, the criminal law on homosexuality was much more lenient, and in 1988, they ended discrimination between homo and heterosexuals in terms of the criminal code. Certainly, the common language meant that there was a lot of mutual observation going on in these countries. This combination of differences and entanglements is what makes it so intriguing to trace the queer history of German-speaking Europe. Interesting. Tracing processes of change. Asked whether the network has a normative agenda, given its deep exploration of phenomena such as emancipation from discrimination and social marginalization, Gammy counters that the aim was to identify historically specific conditions that generate particular problems. We use terms like discrimination or injustice, which all carry some normative baggage. But how can you talk about discrimination or injustice in, like, a real and true way if you don't apply the baggage to them, right? If you're trying to, like, normalize everything from a historical standpoint, then discrimination and injustice just kind of go away in a way that they shouldn't. Right? Because, like, in order to understand where we are now, we have to understand the types of discrimination and injustices that were forced upon people in prior years. It's kind of weird. Simultaneously, the project can identify individuals and groups who work towards either preventing or enabling change. Thereby, they may fail or succeed according to their own criteria, and they may engender unintended results. As historians, we trace these processes with an open-minded attentiveness. If it wasn't presumptuous, I would say that our project is utopian and meticulously empirical at the same time. I don't know about you, but I do not trust these researchers. This is a hella red flag, dude. Professor Benno Gammy holds the chair in the history of gender and sexuality in the Department of History at the EUI. Before joining the EUI in 2021, he helped establish the Center for Queer History at Goldsmiths, University of London. Explore his recent book, Anders Foolen. Project co-coordinators are Andrea Rotman and Martin Luke, both Free University Berlin. Also, both people who are named in this thing, the Queere Zeitgeschichten, which is their not investigative. What am I trying to say? It's like their funded research network. Those two people, Luke and Rotman, are also involved in this research network arm that's being funded by the DFG. So that's interesting that these are basically, like, very close friends participating in all of these things together. And then the last thing I brought up is Queering the Museum Project. I don't like how the acronym is QTM. That just makes me think of ATM, which is ass to mouth. And Queer Digital Stories Identity. This post is the third in a series written by participants of our Queer Digital Storytelling Workshop. Below is the film created by Caleb Hernandez, Identity. There we go.
Extremely nervous, I held my partner's hand. The sketch was printed and transferred onto my shaven chest. The artist quickly asked,
How the fuck is this story starting out with a fucking chest tattoo? Holy fuck.
"Ready?" But before I could call the whole thing off, it started to hurt. I lay face up on a sturdy table, getting my first tattoo. 2 sets of 3 lines, an inner and an outer triangle, black outlines. The most painful part of the experience. At one point the artist stopped and mumbled something about the line being too thin. He changed the needle of the tattoo gun and began to penetrate the same line he had just finished.
Why
The
would
pain
you
was so intense,
why would you
I
say it
wanted
like
to
that?
scream, but just couldn't bring myself to do it. It was when he got
What does
to
the
end of that
triangle
last
mean?
line that I started to realize how momentous this memory would be for me. Realizing that my identity was
Nikocado
literally being
avocado
tattooed
jump scare?
onto my body, and I could no longer escape or hide from it, and no longer needed to.
What?
It was when the tattoo was being colored in that the physical pain became a way for me to release all of the tormenting emotions of guilt, shame, and loss that I had been holding in for too long.
What?
The artist started with purple, the outer triangle. Purple triangles served to identify Bible students, known as Jehovah's Witnesses, to
What?
the Nazis. It's a memento,
What?
a reminder of my upbringing growing up in those beliefs. A piece of my identity that I rejected naively
Hold on.
to identify
Hold
Bible...
on. He's getting a double triangle tattoo, and part of it's being colored in purple to denote being a Jehovah's Witness who was targeted by the Nazis? Did Jehovah's Witnesses exist in Nazi Germany? Is this real? Chat, is this real? What the hell is going on? I'm confused. Not to your knowledge, but I mean, like, it could be real, and I just don't know.
students, known as Jehovah's Witnesses, to the Nazis. It's a memento, a reminder of my upbringing growing up in those beliefs.
They did? Okay.
A piece of my identity that I rejected naively as unimportant, and that I now have come to embrace for the good and the bad. Losing my
Also, I can't tell. Is this guy like recounting a story of someone who was in Nazi Germany who had to get these identifying tattoos, or is he like is he like, you know, the grandchild of a Holocaust either victim or survivor, and he's like, I'm going to have stolen Holocaust valor. Maybe this is what Nux needs to do. He needs to get like a stolen Holocaust valor tattoo so people stop lying about him. He can just rip off his shirt and be like, look at my Holocaust tattoo. Now you can't criticize me. It sounds like he's being victim vicariously. I'm very confused. Hopefully they clear this up.
biological family after I was excommunicated for being gay by that organization has continued to be a part of my healing process. Working quickly, the artist...
Hold on, I'm
filled
going
the
to
center
replay that
triangle
entire
with-
section. I'm
the
so
artist started with
confused.
purple, the outer triangle. Purple triangles served to identify Bible students, known as Jehovah's Witnesses, to the Nazis. It's a memento, a reminder of my upbringing growing up in those beliefs. A piece of my identity that I rejected naively as unimportant, and that I now have come to embrace for the good and the bad. Losing my biological family after I was excommunicated for being gay by that organization has continued to be a part of my healing process.
Okay, so he was excommunicated by his family who were Jehovah's Witnesses, and in response to this, to reclaim his identity that he decided he no longer needed because he was gay and the Jehovah's Witnesses kicked him out, which I feel like is the rightful thing to do, right? Like, fuck those guys, right? Like, fuck. But then he's like, I'm gonna get the triangle on my chest and color it in the color that the Nazis used to denote the Jehovah's Witnesses because I was excommunicated by my family of Jehovah's Witnesses. This is a part of my identity. I don't understand what the fuck I am listening to.
Working quickly, the artist filled the center triangle with the color pink. Pink triangles function to identify queers to the Nazis as well, who were also fighting concentration camps.
Oh my god, it is stolen Holocaust valor! Fucking no way! If I met someone with one of these tattoos, I would not be able to take them fucking seriously. Holy shit. You don't see the problem with them excommunicating people who break the rules? A church is essentially like a club, and clubs have rules. You break the rules, you leave the club. I'm not saying there's a problem with that. I'm saying, like, if I did something to break the rules and they excommunicated me, I would also have the mindset of, yeah, fuck those guys. Right? Like, they have every right to do it, but I have every right to be like, yeah, fuck those guys. So it makes no sense to me that he would be like, I was excommunicated and now I'm going to use the colors that the Nazis used to denote the Jehovah's Witnesses in my stolen Holocaust valor tattoo.
I once despised this part of my identity and wished for it to be removed from within me. And now, it's permanently my badge of pride. The 2 triangles placed over my heart serve to remind me of the struggle queers and minorities alike have conquered in our history, and also a constant reminder of the responsibility that I had given to myself. September 29th, 2006, the night I came out to my mother, to never be ashamed of or hide who I am. Finding strength in my own identity has enabled me to find the courage to love without barriers.
I don't understand what this has to do with the museum. This isn't really like history. This is just some guy. I don't understand. I don't understand, man. It's new history. Don't think about it. He claimed history to be his own, though. He related it to the Nazis. Therefore, it's history now. The Queering the Museum project was an intense 4 days of self-reflection. I mean, I guess if you're typically incapable of perceiving breakfast, 4 days of self-reflection would feel like a lifetime. It asked that each person share a story. This request seems simple enough. What I didn't realize was that the project would help me find a focus for my art. Push me to confront my past and serve as a reminder of the wonderful aspects of my life that I often overlook. The process we underwent asked that we not only share our story, but to also listen and understand the experiences of other participants. Our stories were all very unique, and it was clear that there was no one queer experience that could represent us all. This, I thought, was wonderful. Yeah, but how many of those queer experiences were stolen Holocaust valor? We need to tabulate that. How many number tattoos did you get? It made me interested in learning the stories of other queer individuals. This, combined with photography, led me to create work based on queer experience. Why do they keep capitalizing queer as well? From drag queens and their relationships with their mothers, interviewing self-identified queer persons of all walks of life in their homes, to performing interventions on Jehovah's Witness Bibles to speak for my sisters, fathers, and my own experience in a controlling and unwavering religion. I thought interventions were bad. This project pushed me to visit my hometown last summer and speak with one of my aunts for the first time in 8 years. I was able to ask questions that I had been terrified to learn the answers to when I was younger. I learned that my father's sexuality was fluid and he had contracted HIV and AIDS in 1993 and died of an infection that same year. Oh, this guy's poor mother, dude. Holy fuck. This infection had been kept from me since I was 7 years old. The same visit led to a reconnection with one of my sisters. She found out that I was in the area and reached out to me on social media. She wanted me to know that she had a girlfriend and was going to come out to the family. She is now facing the same rejection that I had 9 years ago. And I'm happy she's now living her truth and has me help to talk with. I kind of want to know, right, it's odd that his father was gay and contracted HIV and AIDS, and then he was also gay. What are the odds that you have like a gay parent and a gay child? That's kind of interesting. The family, it's so Jehovah's Witnesses. It's so Jehovah. I am so much more grateful for all that I have in my life: a supportive partner, a home, 2 wonderfully eccentric dogs, an education from one of the top 25 universities in the world, and a perspective that encompasses more than my own. These are now a part of my story, a story I wouldn't have been able to create without the guidance and reminders that the Queering the Museum project has afforded me. A story is worth telling, and a story is worth listening to. Caleb is a student at the University of Washington. He recently completed a BFA in photo media. Having visited countless museums of all genres, Caleb understands that not just a queer narrative is missing from museums, but also that it's desperately needed. For all of the queer youths out there that need to see a part of themselves represented and appreciated as important contributors to history. I feel like everything we just read was entirely pointless and didn't add anything to any conversation. And if he wanted to submit something to the Queering the Museum project, it should have been his experience coming out to his Jehovah's Witness family, the rejection thereof, and him having to live through being rejected by his family and figuring out how to move on with his life. Like that would have been the story to tell. Not this weird Holocaust tattoo that you shouldn't have. But I guess now we know what this queering stuff is. Let's go back to the original article. We had to take a little tangent. Can I even remember what the original article was? Yeah, here we go. It was the Daily Mail article, Woke Schools Telling You That Black People Built Stonehenge. One resource from the Classical Association's Queering the Past project, which is what we just finished reading about, claims the Roman Emperor Nero married a trans woman called Sporus, but omits the fact that they probably underwent a forced castration rather than consensual gender reassignment. It comes as the government conducts its curriculum review to reflect the issues and diversities of our society, which the report says may be unnecessary as schools already do it. I thought it wasn't happening though. I thought conservatives were just pushing a conspiracy theory when they said that this was happening. So are we now at the it's happening and it's a good thing portion of the slope here? Backed by former education secretaries Lord Blunkett and Nadhim Zahawi, the report also calls for pupils to be impartially given a better overview of British history. It's not really impartial if they're just making shit up though, right? A Classical Association spokesman said its teaching resources were complicated and nuanced, where more than one interpretation is possible. Oh, they're doing the same thing as math. 2 + 2 is no longer always 4, chat. Sometimes it can be 5. A Department for Education spokesperson said the Curriculum and Assessment Review is considering how to ensure young people have access to a broad and balanced curriculum. Meanwhile, Mr. McGovern warned history is seen as a vehicle for undermining and destroying British national identity. I feel like Mr. McGovern's right on the fucking nose here. Policy Exchange's research examined teaching resources that are promoted as being appropriate for schools. While schools have to deliver classes according to exam board specifications, they are also allowed to source their own materials, which may be produced by third-party organizations. Oh, it really is like the Yasuke situation. Holy fuck. Separately, the think tank also gathered responses to Freedom of Information requests about the curriculum sent to 249 nationally representative secondary schools. The responses revealed the most popular curriculum topic taught to children aged 11 to 14 was the transatlantic slave trade, taught in 99% of schools. At the other end of the scale, the battles of Waterloo and Trafalgar were taught in just 11% of schools, while for Agincourt it was 18%. I feel like those should be monumentally important things to teach, especially in the UK, considering, like, their involvement in those battles. Like, I just fucking... What? I am the history. That's a little crazy. Slavery. Can't we move on? What's even crazier is, like, the transatlantic slave trade is something that you can't even talk about in, like, completely historically, right? Because, like, whenever it's brought up, and this was something that happened in my Discord, people were just like, oh, you need to censor people talking about historical things because, like, as you know, people might not like that. And I was like, if people are going to talk about the transatlantic slave trade and how some of the slave ships were possibly owned by Jews, I'm not going to censor them for that. Right? Like, that doesn't seem like something I should censor. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Why would I censor that? The data also showed 83% said that they had either decolonized or diversified their history teaching. History doesn't need to be decolonized or diversified. History just is. And if you're not interested in telling what history just is, you are pushing an agenda. And that's not to say, like, we should only learn about certain areas of the country. I feel like I was done a disservice in high school by having the Holocaust taught like 7 fucking years in a row. We don't need that many years of Holocaust education. I want to learn more about Chinese history and Korean history and African history, right? Like, I want to learn more about other countries and what's gone on there. But we get beaten over the head with just 1 or 2 situations so many times. Why would they teach us? Exactly, and you got your degree in history? Yeah, it's like, I want to learn more, but I want to learn history as it actually happened, not by someone who has an agenda to push. But McCost, how many years were you in high school? The education of, like, that stuff started in 6th grade, I do believe. I'm probably not numbering correctly. Yeah, that's like 6 years. But I also had German class as a language. And when you take German as a language, they give you, like, supplemental Holocaust learnings. So I not only had the Holocaust learnings in my history classes, but we had to have that in German class as well. So, thank God for the teachers' union. Everlasting war propaganda for the win. A transatlantic is derived by the people who were transgender slave sellers in the Atlantic during the 1600s. Yeah, let's push that as fact. That's real. That's true and real. This guy, I don't know who this is. Corey DeAngelis, senior fellow, American Culture Project, visiting fellow, bunch of tags here. He's married to Miranda. I don't know who any of these people are. It says, breaking, undercover journalist caught an administrator at UNC bragging about pushing DEI despite it being banned. She says staff just finesse the language. They do work that is covert. The university provost ran away when confronted, and then he linked the video. Wow, it's almost like what I've been saying is happening for the past year and a half has been happening. Wow, that's crazy. Who could have seen this coming? If only people listened to a cartoon foxwoman.
So we just met with Jennifer Troyer, the provost of the University
This
of North
person
Carolina,
looks
Charlotte,
scary.
and we confronted her with the fact that their staff was caught on hidden camera bragging about pushing DEI in defiance of the Board of Regents ban. Hi, Ms. Troyer.
Yes.
I'm Adam Gillette with Accuracy in Media. How are you?
Good.
We received
God,
a
I
report
fucking
that
love
some
body
of your
cams.
staff is still pushing DEI in defiance of the Board of Trustees ban.
I'm not talking to you. I don't know why you...
So this is Janique Sanders.
It sounds like you guys can't even do that here. It sounds like
a lot of changes.
Janique Sanders is the Assistant Director of Leadership and Community Engagement at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Wow, I wonder what her position used to be called before they changed the language to Leadership and Community Engagement. Ooh, wow, I can't imagine what she might have been doing before that.
What did they call it? Replace and repeal.
oh
yeah.
oh I hate that.
Decision, basically.
Okay.
So we had a former, like I guess you would consider it a DEI policy.
Yeah.
It also established a CDO presence on this
Yeah.
campus. I'm just gonna give you a real spill. I'm
Yeah.
not about to hide it because I
Please.
have I have a general feeling that you're fine, and that you won't.
This is also why the bridge meetings are so fucking fascinating, because when they feel like they're around only other people that believe in the same moral imperatives that they do, they are crazy fucking honest about what they're trying to do. So all of these like recorded bridge meetings I have are wild, and I really do hope that I can make them public at some point. I don't know how to do it in a way where I would not be doing something illegal. Like, I don't think I've done anything illegal, right? But like, I'm not a journalist, so I don't know.
Go back and say like, hey, she taught me about all the stuff.
She said the word of the year is finesse. They're going to continue doing the work, but they're just going to finesse the language. Are you familiar with this?
Are there things happening?
Yes.
Oh, love. Okay. So it's equity work is still happening on campus. Don't worry.
We can't use the word equity anymore.
Yeah.
So we've renamed, we've revised, we've recalibrated, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
Remember what Cheryl Dyes just said in a few meetings ago when I was paraphrasing because I couldn't show the video? Or it's just like, it doesn't matter what the language is. You can name it whatever you want. You just have to be committed to the work.
language changes,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
But the people who have to be in the presence of and in the space don't change.
No.
So
Smart.
I think the guys that it's like leadership. In order to lead diverse groups of people, you have to know about diverse groups of people. We don't have to call them diverse groups of people, but we can just say that everybody has different stocks of knowledge.
So in the state of North Carolina, the Board of Regents banned DEI from their universities. But here at UNC Charlotte, we found that they're merely finessing the language.
That's why I told my students this year, the word of the year is finesse.
Finesse.
Okay. So there are certain things that I can't say,
Yeah.
and I haven't said them this whole time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at learning how to be PC.
Do you think the Board of Regents...
And this is what we're going to see pretty much all over the place, and why people like these guys recording them, the accuracy and media people, are incredibly important. Because like, even if people aren't going to listen to me pointing this out for the past year and a half, them going undercover and catching these people actually saying it flat out should hopefully bring more attention to all of this. As I mean, McCarthy didn't go far enough, dude.
would be bothered knowing the fact that even though that the university claims that they've gotten rid of DEI, your staff is openly flouting that they're still pushing DEI just under other names?
I'm also just really dedicated, I guess is the word, to making sure that our students feel loved and supported. I could care less about whatever you want to call my office.
Come on.
All of that's going to change regardless.
Exactly.
You're always going to merge or shift or change.
Something.
Maybe in 15 years, like, it's going to be something different anyway.
Yeah. Language
Just like,
it evolves.
Always.
We don't use the same language we
This
used
isn't language evolution or changing. This is subversion of language.
5 years ago.
Exactly.
Always evolves, yep.
Even though some people still want to.
Oh.
But with that being said, but with that being said, one of the things that I always think about is how can we address those issues and those conversations, but in a way that's PC.
Did you know about any of this happening? Do you have any comment or any thought on this at all? What do you say to the taxpayers who don't want DEI at their publicly funded universities?
Those are some of the things that are happening. If you're looking for like a outward DEI position, not gonna happen.
Yeah. Okay.
But if you are interested in doing work that is covert, there are opportunities.
Okay.
So covert, so like,
yeah, what does that look like?
Like, think about this way. We're thinking of student success, student retention. Yeah.
No comment for the taxpayers?
And obviously student success and student retention are vague enough that people will just think that those are normal terms. That we've gone over this a couple of times with them co-opting just relatively normal terms that are used in other industries and using them for their DEI purposes, because nobody's going to think twice when they hear a term that's just fucking normal.
Are you going to continue finessing things like Miss Sanders?
In the last one step
Because why?
because they've been working together.
It was 73.
I didn't know they can say, I feel oppressed. So now, I'm a very analytical person. So now, it's possible that we have to find new ways to address. There you go. It's up the opposite direction.
May I help you with something?
Sure.
Have you talked with University Communications?
We tried to find them. Will you take us to them? If you want to take action right now, click on the link below this video where you can send one message that goes directly to the email addresses of the Board of Regents of this university. They're the ones who said DEI shouldn't be pushed anymore, and they deserve to know that the law hasn't changed things.
And this video was 20 hours ago. And man, that was fast, because after this video, I guess enough people clicked on the link in their description, because I have this article. UNC Charlotte administrator no longer employed after DEI video goes viral. UNC Charlotte says an administrator is no longer employed after a video went viral of her implying work related to diversity, equity, and inclusion was still happening on campus. The video, which appears to use a hidden camera, was originally posted by nonprofit activist group Accuracy in Media. Posts on X by Corey DeAngelis, who identifies himself as a senior advisor for the nonprofit, received more than 4 million views. They caught the attention of Assistant U.S. Attorney General Harmeet Dillon and North Carolina Senate Leader Phil Berger, who also posted about the video. We've renamed, reorganized, recalibrated, so to speak. Janique Sanders can be seen saying in the video posted to X, because language changes, but people who have to be in the presence of and in the space don't change. At one point in the video, the person recording asks, "So equity work is still happening on campus?" Sanders then says, "I'm not allowed to say that, but," and nods. Sanders was an assistant director of the UNC Charlotte Office of Leadership and Community Engagement. It's unclear whether she was fired or resigned, and university officials declined to comment further as it pertained to personal matters. But officials said that Sanders' comments do not reflect the stance of the university. The employee's statements were inaccurate and do not reflect the university's actions, UNC Charlotte Deputy Chief Communications Officer Christy Jackson told the Charlotte Observer Thursday afternoon. The individual featured in the video had no policy-making authority, no role in compliance matters, and was not authorized to speak on these issues. Following an internal review, the individual is no longer employed by UNC Charlotte. And while this is a good thing that this individual has lost their job and their ability to push this DEI nonsense, I do not believe the school when they say that this person was acting independently, this doesn't reflect what's happening at the school. I do not believe that. I do not believe that in any way, shape, or form. They are the ones who still have the Office of Leadership and Community Engagement, and we all know what that means. They'll scramble and weasel their way. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just like that one university in Texas that we read about where like they didn't even punish the people who were still pushing DEI after they had ruled that it's not allowed on campus. Who approved of the change of the name of the position? That's a good question. Sanders' biographical page on UNC Charlotte's website has been removed. And this is the tweet from Corey that we read earlier. The controversy comes after President Donald Trump's Department of Education gave universities an ultimatum in February to eliminate diversity initiatives or risk losing federal funding. The University of North Carolina System Board of Governors already moved to walk back DEI. It voted last May to repeal its diversity, equity, and inclusion policy and gave guidance to university chancellors that dedicated DEI offices violate its new policy, emphasizing institutional neutrality. And from some of the Bridge Project Forward guidance emails we've been reading, the lawyers who are working with them insist that these schools do not have to follow these new rules, and that it is actually unconstitutional to enforce them because these places have freedom of speech. So it's been an interesting tango in the Bridge dockets that have been being given out to us. And I would also say, when these places vote to repeal diversity, equity, and inclusion policies, as well as saying no dedicated DEI offices, this is part of the Bridge initiative. Bridge in its entirety, when it started talking about how it wanted to transform the DEI landscape back in 2023, was saying that it doesn't want to have dedicated DEI offices and that companies should not have them. That it might be necessary to have a dedicated DEI office when you're first injecting the DEI tenets into your company, but the end goal should be to dismantle and disassemble the DEI offices and then disseminate the employees who are working in those DEI sectors to just everywhere else in the company so that they may be able to continue their work while also being a vital role that can't just be cut. UNC Charlotte later closed 3 offices as a result: the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, Office of Identity, Equity, and Engagement, and the Office of Academic Diversity and Inclusion. I feel like that doesn't matter when they still have something called the Office of Leadership and Community Engagement. This is just the same stick by another name. Jackson said the university would conduct a review to ensure all employees understand and adhere to relevant policies and law. Story was published May 29th at 4 p.m. Higher education needs to lose its federal funding at this point. It's literally a political movement funding itself off taxes. Yeah, it's gotten pretty fucking rough out there, actually. The universities and the other educational institutions have been ideologically captured for a hot fucking minute, unfortunately. This one says, DEI dropped, medical schools won't be graded on diversity amid federal and state crackdowns. Citing state crackdowns on diversity, equity, and inclusion, the organization that accredits medical schools has dropped diversity as a measure of the quality of medical education. That seems a little weird, that this would have been a metric for accreditation in the first place. Like, what do they mean? Why? The Liaison Committee on Medical Education on May 19th voted to eliminate diversity programs and partnerships as criteria when it grades the performance of medical schools that confer MD degrees to students. The Liaison Committee said it acted because new and proposed state laws targeting diversity, equity, and inclusion conflict with the accrediting body's standards. Eliminating diversity standards would create a single set of accreditation expectations with which all schools, regardless of their location and current legislative environment, must comply, the Liaison Committee said in a statement. So, I mean, why wasn't this the case to begin with? Right? If they're saying that this is a good thing, that now all schools will have the same accreditation expectations, why was this even introduced in the first place? Why did they have this as a accreditation to get MD degrees, dude? A liaison committee spokesperson said that the committee made the decision after thoughtful and careful consideration and discussion. Its 2 sponsoring organizations, the Association of American Medical Colleges and the American Medical Association, did not answer questions from USA Today. The decision to target diversity is a setback in efforts to attract medical students of all backgrounds, said doctors who have worked to promote diversity. If you are a doctor, would you also not want people who are most, suited for the job? Why would you want to pick people based on skin color or ethnicity in order to become a doctor? That doesn't make any sense. Dr. Virginia Kane, an Indiana University professor of medicine, said it's important for doctors to connect and communicate with different cultures. We're just dumbfounded by this decision made by LCME, said Kane, who serves as president of the National Medical Association, which represents black physicians. Kane said studies have shown that black patients experience better health outcomes and engage more effectively when treated by black physicians. We have such a rich and incredible history of talented black physicians, said Kane, the public health department director of Marion County, Indiana. If we knock out the access before they're even entering medical schools or academic schools, we're just going to be a nation that's not as creative, not as innovative, and not as successful. I don't think there's any reason why anyone who's black can't become a physician. I just think that it should be the same standards across the board, and their skin color should not come into any sort of question when being considered for medical school or a medical school degree. Like, your skin color should have zero attribution to how well you can be a doctor. Black and Hispanic doctors lag the overall population. About 5.2 of the nation's doctors in 2022 identified as black, according to a physician workforce report by the Association of American Medical Colleges. That's an improvement since 2019, when 2.6% of physicians identified as black. That is a huge jump. From 2019 to 2022, going from 2.6% to 5.2%, that is massive! Still, the share of black doctors doesn't match the 13.7% in the overall population. And I don't think it ever should. This is the same logic they use where, like, why aren't there more women in boardrooms? And it's like, well, first of all, you have to have women that are interested in achieving that. They're interested in having that as a career in the first place. And then you have to weed out the women interested in having that as a career with the women who are capable of working in that environment. It's insane how people will lower standards in order to have better looking metrics. And I don't think that that's going to be good for anyone. Why aren't there more women in American football teams? About 6.3% of physicians in 2022 identified as Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, which also significantly trails the overall population. More than a half dozen states have enacted laws placing restrictions on diversity efforts at state institutions, such as colleges and universities. Florida, for example, prohibits state institutions from giving preferential consideration for employment, admission, or promotion. And this article's trying to make this sound like a bad thing, but this is a good thing. Your sex, your sexuality, your fucking race, your ethnicity, none of these should be taken into consideration when being considered for a university, for a college, for a job. Like, that, none of that makes sense to take into consideration for that. What about Asian and Indian? They don't matter unless they can use them for some purposes. What about us Asians, you stupid article? You guys outperform whites, and therefore if you're mentioned, it takes away from the point they're trying to make. And after taking office for his second term, President Donald Trump issued an executive order to end diversity, equity, and inclusion policies in the federal government and affirmative action in federal contracting. Good. To reflect its turn away from enforcing diversity standards at medical schools, the Liaison Committee said it's updating guidance for academic years 25 to 26, as well as 26 to 27. The Liaison Committee assigns survey teams to assess medical schools on a dozen standards for items such as leadership, curriculum, faculty, and medical student selection, support, and services. Schools that previously got diversity-related citations, or those preparing for accreditation, won't have to provide information on their diversity efforts, the Liaison Committee said. The National Medical Association said that the federal and state efforts to cut diversity, equity, and inclusion is limiting access to medical education for the next generation of black physicians. If the only way that you were able to get a medical education was because of your skin color and not because you were able to actually flourish in that education landscape, then you shouldn't be there. This isn't like a crazy thing to say. Kane said the nation already has a physician shortage projected to worsen within 5 years, and when about 1 in 3 practicing physicians will reach retirement age. It's important for everybody, Kane said. All medical students should have the ability to connect, to be open, to communicate with your patients. To do that, you have to have some level of understanding related to that culture. Some of the best doctors I've had have been Korean. I don't have any connections to Korean culture or Korean people other than we're both Americans at this point. So, like, this is an absolutely insane thing to say. My gynecologist for, like, nearly a decade was not only a Korean, but also a man. And he was the best fucking gynecologist I ever had. So, Like, you know? The move away from DEI is disheartening. Nah, no, it's actually very heartening and wonderful, and it gives us faith and hope in the future. Because if DEI is lowering metrics everywhere and people are getting into positions that they shouldn't be getting into because of either their skin color or their sexuality or their gender, this gives incentive for people who actually would be putting forth effort to put in less effort. Because why work for something when people have lower standards to meet for the same exact thing? This is contributing to a competency crisis. Dr. Osose Obo knows how important it is to reduce bias and improve trust with patients. Obo graduated medical school from Michigan State University and completed an internal medicine residency at Johns Hopkins. She is now completing a gastroenterology fellowship at University of California, San Francisco. Obo said the federal and state crackdown on DEI and the liaison committee's response is disheartening. Man, chat, this is reminding me of when I went to the emergency clinic during those months where I was just violently vomiting out of my mind. And I had a prescription for like some like, I think it was Tylenol 3. So it wasn't even like a real opiate. It was just like Tylenol with steroids or whatever the fuck. And I went to the clinic and they were just like, well, there's not really anything we can do for you. And I was like, hey, what if you just refilled my prescription from my primary care doctor? And they were like, oh, we can't actually do that even because, you know, sometimes some doctors think that prescribing those things is a good idea, but like other doctors disagree. And so like, we can't refill those prescriptions from your primary care doctor. And that guy, like, I refused to pay the bill for that visit because I was like, I'm not fucking paying $90 for this fucking dipshit. This was a DEI doctor, as it were. There's an attack on something that is actually good, Obo said. Diversity has been rebranded as giving unqualified folks opportunity, when in reality, it's increasing exposure to qualified people. They keep saying this, but the results you can see with your own eyes. Like... She said bias in a medical setting can surface both among patients and doctors. Obo, who is black, said she recently gave bad news to a black patient's family. She explained the diagnosis and the next steps the medical team planned to take. They were so appreciative to receive it from me, Obo said. They understood why we were taking the steps we're taking and why we were going to do the interventions we were going to do. They felt like nobody else had explained it to them. You don't have to be black to be able to communicate with black people. I don't understand what the fuck this logic is. Like, yeah, most doctors are pieces of shit. I have firsthand experience with that. I fucking hate doctors. So when you get one that can explain things to you, that's fucking refreshing. But never in my life have I been like, oh, thank God that doctor was white. None of the other doctors would have been able to speak to me coherently if they weren't a white doctor. Like, what the fuck? Can anybody speak jive? Quoted by Airplane.
Just hang loose, blood. She gonna catch up on the rebound on the med side.
What it is, big mama? My mama raised no dummies. I duck a rap.
So it's funny that this article is nothing but good things happening and bad people complaining about how the good things are actually bad, by the way. It's a weird relatability thing that they're trying to push because it makes black patients more comfortable, but really they just want more diverse quote-unquote numbers. It's like I could understand that in certain sectors, right? But like, I don't know. I feel like I would be clipped out of context and heavily canceled if I was like, you know what, chat? As a white woman, I only feel comfortable seeing white doctors. And so whenever I go to the doctor, I'm going to try and filter through the different doctor names until I find one who is white, because I don't feel comfortable seeing any of the other ones if they're not the same race as me. Like, what? That would be a weird thing to say. Corporate America's retreat from DEI has eliminated thousands of jobs. What an interesting way to say that there were thousands of people working in busy work jobs that had no value and no worth to absolutely anyone, so it was just a whole bunch of wasted money. What an interesting way to say that. Candace Birdsong Williams has filled the front room of her sunlit North Carolina home with sources of inspiration. Overflowing plants and photos of her 3 daughters share space with a brightly painted sign of a favorite Bible verse. God is within her, she will not fall. Then there are books, stacks of memoirs, business advice, and professional guides to the field now known as diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. That's where Birdsong Williams, who generally radiates a calming optimism, spent the last 18 years of her career. This woman has spent 18 years in a worthless position made by busy work and ideologues where she has no other skill set other than to push propaganda, and we're supposed to feel bad for these people. Her voice breaks as she picks up one textbook simply called The Chief Diversity Officer. The title represents the pinnacle of her once hot profession and the promotion she was working towards before she was laid off in August and found that the DEI job market had turned into a toxic wasteland. I was hoping that was going to be the next role, she said, prior to the current political climate. As she approached her 50th birthday last summer, Birdsong Williams was pretty close to the top of her chosen field. Her most recent job title was Global Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. But now, Chief Diversity Officer seems like a promotion that will never happen for her and for thousands of U.S. workers. Oh God, I'm coming! This is so great to hear. This is fucking wonderful, dude. Also, can I just say that Global Director of DEI sounds like a higher position than Chief Diversity Officer? Why is it the one that sounds like a lesser position is actually the higher one? The anti-DEI political climate Birdsong Williams refers to has been slowly bubbling up for years. Even before President Trump was reelected and set things to a hard boil by immediately signing executive orders banning what he calls illegal DEI. Now, scores of employees are in all-out retreat from anything adjacent to the word diversity, including the experienced DEI specialists who were once in high demand. For example, just this month, Verizon announced that it was ending many of its DEI policies, as it sought the Federal Communication Commission's blessing for a $20 billion merger. It promised the agency that its human resources department will no longer have a team or any individual roles focused on DEI. I don't trust them. Once again, listen to the language that they're using. They will no longer have a team or any individual role focused on DEI. Once again, this is Bridge's goal to no longer have outwardly facing named DEI teams or individuals. This retreat is decimating the job market for people like Birdsong Williams. Since early 2023, U.S. employers have eliminated more than 2,600 jobs, with words including diversity or DEI in the titles or descriptions, according to a data analysis conducted for NPR by the workforce analytics firm Revelio Labs. And this is also interesting because, right, the goal is to take these people who were DEI officers or in DEI teams and put them in other more prominent positions in the company to do actual work at the company alongside pushing the moral imperative that is DEI. But if some of these people are literally just losing their jobs instead of being reconfigured elsewhere, that means that these people literally had nothing else to offer besides being able to push this propaganda, which is insane to me. Employment in DEI roles has started to decline. This is a little graph from 2016, where there were about 7,049 people in DEI-related jobs, all the way up to the peak in 2023, where there were over 20,000 DEI-related jobs. That is crazy. That accounts for about 13% of the DEI-related jobs that exist in nearly 2023, at the peak of the hiring boom. That's really interesting that it's 13% of the DEI-related jobs. Now that boom has shifted firmly into reverse. This Sunday, May 25th, marked the 5th anniversary of George Floyd's murder by a white police officer and the start of a national reckoning over systemic racism.
Ah, Saint Floyd of the fentanyl, in his name we pray, amen.
They always gotta mention him, chat. Corporate America rushed to join in, loudly proclaiming that businesses should and would do more to fight discrimination and create more opportunities for workers of all backgrounds. However superficial some of these promises turned out to be, big companies spent a lot of money on them and hired thousands to implement them. By early 2023, U.S. companies employed more than 20,000 people focused on DEI. You know what's also interesting is the pandemic happened around the same time. I wonder how many of these positions were actual DEI positions and how many of these were just literal non-DEI, but DEI by another name, busy work positions, which is how we got all of those women on TikTok making videos of like,
my day as a $160,000 paid tech worker. I'm gonna go to work and I'm gonna eat a donut and then I'm gonna do yoga and then I answer emails and then I go have fruit cups and then I go to a meeting and then I have more fruit cups and then I go out of the office for drinks with my coworkers. And everyone's like, what the fuck do you do? What is your job?
That was more than double the number of such jobs 5 years earlier, according to Revelio Labs' analysis of 8.8 million employers. But almost as soon as companies had staffed up these DEI teams, they faced a backlash from conservative influencers, activists, lawyers, and state and federal officials. These critics argue that DEI is itself discriminatory, and that employers have added barriers for white people, especially white men, to get jobs or promotions, even if they are the most qualified candidates. True and real. The DEI backlash really started gaining steam in 2023 when the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action at colleges and universities. That same year, Bud Light lost more than $1 billion in sales due to a conservative boycott, after it hired a transgender influencer for a brief promotional video. Then, within hours of his second inauguration, Trump ramped up the attacks with his executive orders. He called the programs radical and wasteful and discriminatory against non-minorities who, he said, are denied opportunities and recognition. Since then, his administration has declared open war on diversity programs from government agencies to universities, law firms, cultural institutions, and more. Now, more big companies are fleeing the field. Walmart, Target, Amazon, and Meta are just a few of the mega employers that have ended some of their DEI policies in the past 6 months, as dozens of others scrubbed words like diversity from even their driest public documents. And we've gone over some of these companies. They're not actually getting rid of DEI. We've gone over Walmart, we've gone over Amazon, we've gone over Meta. I don't think I've touched on Target too much, except for like the boycotts they've been facing for cutting some of their DEI programming words. But these are companies that are following the Bridge trajectory. Amazon especially has speakers at Bridge. They are entwined with what Bridge is doing and Bridge is pushing. These are not companies leaving behind DEI. The only people being tricked by this are conservatives who want to believe that we are overall winning and we can stop paying attention, as well as the true believers, TM, who are triggered by certain words, and when those words aren't there, they feel like the work is not being done. So these people need to go through a reprogramming to understand that the words aren't what matters, it's the work itself being continued. That's having a crushing professional impact on people like Birdsong Williams, good, who was laid off before Trump was even elected, and who now has to contend with a job market that is both smaller and more crowded. She's more than 9 months into her search. It's time to put the fries in the bag, lady. It's been pretty tough, she says. I just didn't think it would take this long. The day-to-day work of making employers more inclusive tends to be, like most human resource work, both important and incredibly mundane. People in these jobs generally manage the practical logistics of trying to create workplaces that are more welcoming for all employees and more attractive to a broader pool of qualified candidates. Birdsong Williams, for example, has created mentoring programs so that workers who don't come from the same schools or backgrounds as a company's top executives still have an opportunity to learn from them and network. Why would the school matter? If you have the credentials to be a part of a program, why would the school you come from matter? She's developed resource groups to give underrepresented workers a better peer support system. The use of underrepresented workers gets around them not having to bold-faced say specifically what kind of people. She's helped employers expand their recruiting efforts for new hires, for example, by spending more time at historically black colleges and universities. This kind of work benefits most employers because it makes it easier to hire and retain good employees. Even some of the companies who are ending their DEI policies acknowledge this. Delivering for customers requires attracting the best talent from across the country, Verizon told the FCC this month, adding that it remains committed to creating a culture that leverages and values each person's unique strengths and talents. This is literally just corpo speak. This part isn't even DEI. It's just them being like, yeah, let's say some nice flowery shit so you leave us alone. Verizon is in good company. Many of the employers retreating from DEI have said that they remain committed to creating a culture where everyone can be successful, as a Walmart spokesperson told NPR. And in some cases, they've renamed diversity initiatives with more generic terms. I'm glad that they're actually getting into this. Instead of like just saying it's a retreat, I'm glad they're pointing out how these companies aren't actually retreating. Target and Walmart now talk about belonging, which is again what both Bridge and Sherm suggested to use. You replace equity with belonging and it's a much less politicized term. And so less people will notice what you're continuing to do if you say belonging instead of saying equity. And a lot more people will find it harder to argue against belonging because belonging has a more preferential and like positive meaning than equity does. while Meta's one-time chief diversity officer now oversees something called accessibility and engagement. Some big companies, including Costco and Delta Airlines, are publicly defending their DEI initiatives and the language they use to discuss them. Investors in Apple, Levi, and others have shrugged off anti-DEI shareholder proposals this spring. We've covered all of these on stream, actually. Some businesses and workplace experts say that even the companies that have announced DEI retreats are mostly making superficial and semantic changes while remaining committed to the underlying goals of creating more opportunities for all workers. This is also something a cartoon foxwoman has been saying for the past year and a half. Wow, imagine that. But they're not hiring as many people to do this work anymore, whatever it's called. Revelio Labs reports that companies are now more likely to post jobs that mention belonging, social impact, or culture, but even those have fallen significantly from 2022. And this is again because the entire goal is to remove these positions in their entirety. They want people who are capable of doing not just the work, but also work in other positions in the company, so that their ideologues are less noticeable and more entrenched in a company's everyday operations. There is still more demand for DEI roles and similar roles than what we saw at the beginning of 2020, but it does look like these are trending to reach levels back to where it all started, says Paulina Tilley, a data scientist at Revelio Labs who conducted the analysis for NPR. Meanwhile, chief diversity officers have been resigning, retiring, or getting laid off, and they're not being replaced. This includes at NPR, which has not named another chief diversity officer since Keith Woods retired this spring. NPR has said it remains committed to serving a diverse workforce, and spokesperson Heather Wall said via email that NPR's remaining Office of Diversity Personnel will now report to its chief operating officer as a part of broader strategic changes to NPR's senior leadership structure. In one of the very first videos that I ever showed of Cheryl Dijja talking about what she intends Bridge to be used for, they said that DEI should not be a siloed off approach. It should not be relegated to just your HR or just your marketing sectors. It needs to involve your CEOs and your COOs and other people in the company that are designing policy and shaping the culture of the company. So the fact that they're saying that the remaining people at NPR's Office of Diversity are now reporting directly to the COO, that does not surprise me in any way, shape, or form, because I already knew that this was going to happen. Executive recruiters confirm that they're seeing a slowdown in companies seeking chief diversity officers and other top executives. It's a challenging time to be in DEI work, says Yenling Shek of Russell Reynolds Associates, a global recruiting and advisory firm. All of this leaves veterans like Birdsong Williams, with nearly 2 decades of experience in what she calls my heart's work, facing prolonged unemployment. There's also her fear and pain at seeing her profession publicly vilified. Good. It should be, and you should be. You are a filthy Marxist ideologue who has been destroying our culture and destroying our society and destroying corporate infrastructure this entire time. Your job was worthless. Your knowledge is worthless. You are a useless individual as it stands. I just want a company to see me, she says, which is really ironic because part of DEI is being seen and being heard. With DEI under attack, many in corporate America stopped talking about it. The omerta has left many people working in diversity feeling isolated, worried about their employment prospects, and terrified of discussing it in public. But in February, after multiple job interviews went nowhere, Birdsong Williams decided to speak out. She posted on LinkedIn about her layoff and how fewer DEI roles exist due to the political climate, and how she's trying to take time to breathe, enjoy life, and reflect while job hunting. The world has taken a step back in just the narrative overnight. It's been crazy, she said in late March, at her home in a leafy rural suburb near Raleigh. Raleigh? Birdsong Williams grew up in the area, and she studied occupational health in college, lived part-time in Europe with her then-husband as they started a family. But when her marriage ended, Birdsong Williams settled back home with her 3 daughters, who are now young adults. How did she afford to live part-time in Europe, studying occupational health? What happened to her marriage? I'm curious. In 2007, she started a claims adjuster job for Nationwide, the insurance company, but her degree and early experience working in human resources caught an executive's eye. Soon, Birdsong Williams was asked to help start up a regional program focused on what was then called diversity and inclusion, or just D&I. She recalls leading one meeting with a colleague who didn't seem to be paying attention to what she was saying. But her professional irritation melted once she learned the cause of the seeming disrespect. Her colleague was partially deaf and struggling to lip-read Birdsong Williams' usual rapid cadence. That experience made her realize that diversity runs so deep. It's not only about the things that you can see. Couldn't you just be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll talk slower? Maybe next time I'll provide you with a written transcript of what I'm planning on saying in my speech. Like, I don't, what? What if she was blind? I remember getting excited, she recalls. It became my life's mission at that point. Speaks to one partially deaf person, somehow gains a life mission. I'm 13 and this is deep. Well, considering her only skill is to be a diversity, equity, and inclusion person, you know? You know? So this is the post that she posted on LinkedIn. It's got 72 comments. It's got 333 little updates here. Transparent post here. It's been a bit since I was laid off in August 2024. And honestly, it's been a mix of reflection, soul-searching, and clarity on what truly matters. The initial shock and sadness have shifted into a gift of self-discovery and resetting after years of running at full speed. The reality is, I needed this break. Well, this isn't my first career break. It feels different. For 15 plus years, DEI has been my career, my mission, and my heart's work in helping to build inclusive workplaces. But today, fewer DEI roles exist due to the political climate, which has shifted the approach to my career. My empathy for those who have faced layoffs is even deeper now. It's not just about advice, it's about truly connecting and showing up for others. I also know God is guiding me through this journey, even when I don't know exactly where it's leading. Insert faith. I've learned and noticed, did they leave insert faith here as like, this is where they're supposed to talk about God and they just forgot to delete this from their prompt? Hold, what the fuck does this mean? I've learned and noticed there seems to be a stigma about supporting those who have been laid off or had career breaks. But sometimes stepping outside the game gives you valuable perspective and insight. It's also not taboo for those still working to help. It's a reminder that we're in this together. I've learned that career breaks, whether forced or by choice, are a gift. They allow space to level up, breathe, enjoy life, and reflect on the amazing work you've done. I've held on tighter to the fact that it's okay to pause. Life is short, and we need to savor moments we can't get back. Let's embrace those pauses, trust that they're part of the journey. And when it's time to return to work, and it will be, everything shifts. There's more depth, purpose, and appreciation for the moments we used to rush through. Here's to bold moves, career breaks, and loving life's beautiful unplanned moments. Let's embrace how we work and lead, championing inclusivity and empathy every step of the way. You've got this. I've got this. Let's keep moving forward to the future we're meant to have. Boy, this is another cultural strategist champion in DEI. As a author of Celebrate Anyway, head of social at Riveranon. I don't know what this is. Solving Today, orchestrating for tomorrow, data portfolio lead at Red something. A senior analytics engineer at Adobe. Vice president at People Operations. A CEO at Disclo. I don't know what that is. The vice president of GTM enablement at Catalan. Executive Business Operations Leader, Mentor, and Coach at Realtor Extraordinaire. Hold on, that doesn't sound like a real company. Partnering with an empowering, skilled radiologist with flexible locum? I don't know what that means. That person's title is so fucking long, dude. As she gained more experience, bigger employees started calling. She worked for tech giant Cisco and the software startup GitLab, which hired her to oversee diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Cisco has people who are working alongside Bridge as well now. As it got ready to go public in 2021. That IPO also gave her a decent stock payday, which she says has become a financial cushion during her unemployment. By 2021, corporate America was hitting peak DEI, and Birdsong Williams was fielding weekly calls or emails from recruiters. My inbox was completely on fire, she recalls. Today, it's a deep freeze. Birdsong Williams was laid off by her most recent employer, a private software startup, in early August. Since then, she has interviewed for 2 separate jobs where after several rounds of interviews, she was told that the company was no longer hiring to fill that position. In one case, she saw the company later post a similar job description with no reference to diversity, equity, or inclusion. I don't understand how it has come to a place of just taboo. Don't talk about it, she says. Asked if she's given up on her dream of becoming a chief diversity officer, Birdsong Williams paused for several seconds, fighting back tears. I'm not chasing the title, she said. I just want to do good work until it's time for me to retire. I just want to do absolutely nothing and get paid 6 figures for it. Man, remember during that time where everybody was complaining about how hard it was to get a job, and this woman's like, yeah, my inbox was on fire. What happened? Why can't I have that back? The DEI retreat disproportionately hurts women and people of color. That's a weird way to say that positions being eliminated that were just there for ideological purposes or busy work and had no actual purpose beyond trying to transform culture at a company are disproportionately hurting women and people of color, almost as if to imply that disproportionately the women and people of color did not have the skills to succeed in actual real jobs instead. What a funny thing to say. Those who work in DEI acknowledge that the profession's goals haven't always been well defined at every employer. Some companies have damaged its reputation by treating DEI as a superficial buzzword, or by promising short-term financial benefits that never materialized, or by making ambitious promises without thinking through what it would cost to fulfill them. Companies often spent too much time and energy on initiatives that didn't have a measurable impact, says Joelle Emerson, CEO of workplace consultancy Paradigm. I've seen companies focus on initiatives that made them look super progressive, for example, while still failing to do basic things like ensuring promotion practices are fair, or improving hiring processes so that people from all backgrounds are evaluated fairly, she adds. And we know that based on equity, when they say fair, they don't mean actually fair. They mean given an advantageous edge due to an immutable characteristic. But on the whole, many working in DEI argue that critics who call it discriminatory are fundamentally, and often willfully, misinterpreting their profession. The work of inclusion and diversity is actually making the workplace better for most people, without giving and without taking anything away from anyone, says Jeffrey Simonoff, a longtime executive who created and ran such initiatives for Morgan Stanley, Apple, and Twitter. I would not trust a single person who ran jack shit for Twitter. Holy fuck. Simonoff was an employment lawyer at Morgan Stanley in 2010 when he was also asked to take over running its inclusion and diversity program. He was also, he says, a one-time closeted gay man who had spent his early career worried that his identity would prevent him from advancing professionally. Simonoff says that fear distracted him from fully focusing on his job or performing at his best. Getting involved in Morgan Stanley's resource group for LGBT employees was a game changer. On a personal level, it was like this boulder had been pulled off of each shoulder. These opportunities existed not to give me a leg up over somebody else, he adds, but to simply allow me to do my best work, unburdened by silly things that didn't need to be there. That's a very flowery way to reword the wasn't giving me a leg up over somebody else. As Simonoff points out, many people who specialize in diversity work have some lived experience with feeling marginalized in corporate America. Black women like Birdsong Williams, for example, hold fewer than 3% of the top C-suite executive jobs in America, even though they account for nearly 8% of the US population. Again, you can't have like perfect metrics of like, okay, these type of women make up this percent of the population, therefore this percent of that kind of woman needs to be on every single C-suite board. Like it just won't make sense. It just won't make sense, man. For a few years, the DEI hiring boom offered more opportunities. According to Revelio Labs, women accounted for more than 71% of all DEI professionals from 2020 through 2024, compared with 51% of other roles. So what they're saying is that DEI roles were basically just a big kindergarten for women who couldn't actually get real jobs. That's kind of crazy. Black and Hispanic workers together held only 20% of other jobs, but 33% of DEI roles. We also found out that apparently a lot of federal work jobs that have gotten cuts in the recent Doge cuts were also heavily staffed by minorities and women. DEI roles are more diverse than non-DEI roles. Wow, imagine my shock. Moreover, companies that remain committed to diversity do, in fact, tend to hire a more diverse workforce, especially Black and Asian workers, than companies without DEI teams, Revelio Labs found. That means corporate America's DEI retreat is having an outsized impact on underrepresented employees. See, now they're using the Asians in their statistics because it's going to be beneficial for the underrepresented employees narrative. Both the executives who run these initiatives and the more diverse workforce they help create. Getting rid of these DEI functions is really going to pare back the diversity of the workforce, even to be felt years from now, said Tilly. While some DEI employees hope their work will continue under names such as belonging or cultural transformation, Tilly sees a drop-off in these job titles too. It looks like a lot of the roles that they're moving into are just going to be more generalist human resource roles, she said. Some veteran DEI executives are figuring out if they want to stick with the embattled field or focus on something else. Siminoff, who's been consulting since leaving the nonprofit Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights last year, said it's a tough time for his profession. Doing this work right now is particularly complicated, and I'm just not sure that doing it with all of this uncertainty is something that I would choose right now. Birdsong Williams is trying to keep the faith. She's applying for roles in people and cultural transformation, and hoping that soon an employer will look beyond the now politicized buzzwords on her resume. She's had a lot of practice staying positive over the last several months, including during her long-planned 50th birthday party last August, which she hosted a few weeks after being laid off. It was a bittersweet bash. Birdsong Williams invited more than 100 loved ones to an art museum in downtown Raleigh. Okay, all right, this is like I'm on financial audit now, okay? When you have a 50th birthday party, why are you inviting 100 people to an art museum? That's fucking insane to me. What kind of money are you spending on your birthday? Fucking, where is Caleb Hammer, dude? Definitively impoverished. Yeah, I've lost my job. I'm in poverty. Thankfully, my DEI role got me some fucking equity stocks in one of these companies, so I have a cushion. I'm gonna throw a 100-person birthday bash at an art museum. Have a cry for the plight of the new nobility. You get what you fucking deserve. Most of them didn't even know about her job loss, and she didn't want to let it overshadow the evening. Instead, she put on a shimmering chartreuse dress and made a grand entrance, dancing to Carl Carlton's 1981 funk classic, She's a Bad Mama Jama. I'm dancing, I'm having a moment, but I'm like, only a few in this room know that I don't have a job. Is this really happening? This is how a lot of Zoomers on Caleb Hammer's show end up going into debt. They try to like put on the airs that they're, you know, still in a good job, or they have a good job in general, and they have all of this excess money to be able to spend on like crazy frivolous things, but they end up going into debt over it. And also, how much was this woman getting paid for a fucking DEI job that she would have been able to throw a 100-person birthday bash at an art museum? That's kind of crazy. They also need 20K birthdays. During an overcast afternoon this spring, Birdsong Williams returned to the museum where she hosted that party. There was a new exhibit up, bright, joyous, larger-than-life paintings, mostly of black children playing. It was called The Power of Community. Birdsong Williams stopped in front of one of the canvas of a child crouched on a ledge, seemingly getting ready to jump. The painting by Lamar Whidbey was titled Leap of Faith 1. I love that, she murmured, reading the title out loud. Those are some words that I feel right now. What a weird way to end that article. And she was being paid too much. Anyone in a DEI position is being paid way too much. This article was also way longer than I thought it would be, especially when it said it's a 3-minute fucking listen. Ain't no way, brother. Ain't no fucking way.